Hello and welcome to JROCK'S Babylon. I am your host, Jason J Rock Houston, and it's hard to believe, but we just launched this channel, JROCK'S Babylon, just a month ago. It was around August 1st, and I have had a blast doing this. And let me tell you guys, we are just getting started. As I've heard many people before me say this. So it's not an original line, but I the sentiment is what I'm feeling in regards to J-Rock's Babylon. Keep tuning in because you ain't seen nothing yet. The best is yet to come. Okay, so I thought since today is Labor Day, we would do a special show for you guys to celebrate 1 month of J-Rock's Babylon. Let's kind of talk about the state of J-Rock's Babylon and what this is. It's okay. This is my place. I'm definitely a guy that's into hard rock and metal. I'm into pop culture. Talking about classic TV shows, my favorite music, classic movies. Now, that's something I used to do on another show. And with J-Rock's Babylon, I'm planning to launch in the next week a new pop culture show. And so I want you to all be on the lookout for that. Because again, we're going to be talking about, classic TV shows, movies, music. So a fun part about the new pop culture show is you're going to get me reminiscing about a lot of the things I grew up on and why they mean so much to me. And one of my favorite things to do when talking about pop culture is to celebrate the holidays. And when I'm talking there is, you might see me do some episodes of this new pop culture show we're going to launch in the next week on some of the favorite classic holiday themed movies and stuff. So that's always a lot of fun to do. But so far, J-Rock's Babylon has been kind of a place for hard rock and metal fans to go. Now, I've since really 2017, I started interviewing musicians, up and coming bands. I started like a lot of people. This is how much technology has changed, folks. Doing email type interviews back in the day. This is where initially when the internet kind of was just in its baby infancy, back then, and bands and entertainers and everybody's starting to put up their own official sites. And this is how you contact people. And then a lot of the ways I get many of the great interviews that we get is over the years I made contacts with a lot of great publicists. A publicist is somebody that a band or a musician hires to do their press. Entertainer, whatever the case may be. And a lot of times you reach out to these people and they don't just represent one great artist, but they represent many. And so the opportunity then to who you get to interview kind of widens. And so I got a lot of great publicists I worked with over the years. I'd like to thank them all. I continue to be in contact with these people because this is how I've gotten many of the great interviews over the years. Now let's talk about some of the interviews we've done since launching J-Rock's Babylon, okay? The very first interview we did was with lead singer Dino Wild from the band Red Voodoo. Now, I urge you guys to go, if you haven't already checked out the interview with Dino. It's pretty special for the fact that it was the very first interview that we did on this channel. So I thank Dino for that. Dino is pretty young. Red Voodoo is a great band. They kind of got a classic kind of Van Halen sound to it. And interestingly enough, Dino was sharing with me how they were heavily influenced by Van Halen. So you kind of hear the influence if you listen to any of the Red Voodoo music. And he's just a great young guy, and you can tell the band has come a long way. Since they were initially launched a couple years ago. He talks about working with Tesla's Frank Hannon, guitarist Frank Hannon from Tesla. He produced some of the Red Voodoo tracks. So we talked a little bit about that. Talked about the fact that the band actually met Sammy Hagar, and Sammy Hagar really has endorsed the band. In fact, Red Voodoo, interesting enough, as Dino explained in the interview, was named after a Sammy Hagar solo album that came out a number of years ago. And So again, just Dino's a great guy. Another interview I had great fun doing recently was with David Reese. Now, David Reese I'd interviewed a few times over the years, and but in the past I'd only had the chance to um, interview him, I believe, over the phone and also through email. Again, when I started doing this, initially that's the way things were done. You'd email people questions, and when they had the time to answer the questions, they'd send it back. Now, this interview with David was really fun because the first time I got to do a Zoom interview with him, and that's always fun to me because you get to see who you're talking to. You get to actually see them; they get to see you. And the interview for that reason alone was so much fun with David. And David and I go way back, and we joke about this: the fact that years ago when we first hooked up, if you even remember or aware what we're talking about, we hooked up through MySpace of all things, and MySpace was the place to go back then, before Facebook even existed. Okay, it was a precursor, if you will, to Facebook for anybody who doesn't know. And sadly, MySpace has kind of turned into this virtual little graveyard. It doesn't really kind of just disappeared, doesn't exist anymore. But we reminisced about that, and I shared a story with David that I remembered one of the first interviews I did with him. He'd been kind enough to not only send me his solo album at the time that had just been released, so I could review it, but the follow-up album he had done was just so kind that I was not even expecting this, but he thanked me in the following album that he released, for doing these interviews with him. And I kind of reminisced about remembering that. And so when you listen to the David Reese interview I did recently for JROCK'S Babylon, you hear me and David kind of reminiscing about how we first hooked up, and he's relaunching Bangor Choir. So that's another reason you want to check out the interview. Another great interview I recently did was with another guy I interviewed several times over the years, is Derek Davis, the lead singer from Babylon AD. Now, Babylon AD was one of those bands that they came very close back in the day to kind of making it, but it was one of those many bands that didn't quite hit back in the day. They had a couple of hits that kind of they got played on MTV and radio, but they didn't really get to that next level. Say like Motley Crue or Rat or any of the great bands we know from the 80s, Whitesnake. They didn't actually quite get to that level. They came very close. Now, what's interestingly enough is Babylon AD last year kind of had this, what I'm calling their major comeback, because they put out this killer album last year, Rome Wasn't Built in a Day. And, interestingly enough, they released like 3 or 4 singles from the album, and the album did very well. It was an independent album, but in fact, what Derek was sharing me in this interview that you can see on JROCK'S Babylon, we were kind of talking about the fact that since releasing Rome Wasn't Built in a Day, a lot of people are discovering the band for the first time. A lot of people are rediscovering the band. And interestingly enough, the newer stuff is actually kind of, there's more demand for that than the classic Babylon AD. But either way, people are just loving Babylon AD. Another great interview I did recently was with Helena Cause from Spider Rockets. Now, this was a great interview for a lot of reasons. A lot of times you don't know how an interview is going to go until you actually do it. And again, this was a great interview on Zoom. The visual was really great because here's the thing enough. I'd interviewed Helena, I think, two previous times over Zoom, but the previous 2 times it was with the entire band, the Spider Rockets, that she fronts, that she's the lead singer of. And I always love that when a whole band comes on, and that way you kind of get everybody's perspective. And when you have the whole band come on, it's really a lot of fun. But this recent interview she did for JROCK'S Babylon, she was just super kind. And first of all, what made the interview so much fun is she's explaining to me that she has this dog that she just loves, and the dog was kind of sick, and she explained what the dog is going through. And she said, I hope you don't mind, but he may come in here and jump up on me. I closed the door to try to keep him out. I told her, you know what, Helena, I love animals. You know, let's make your dog part of a show. You know, he's welcome. So that's very much what happened. And her dog, he didn't disturb the interview or nothing. He just sat there calmly on her lap. But visually, you know, checking out the dog, and it made the interview that much more cooler. And I will say, in regards to the Helena Koss interview, like I said, I'd interviewed her with the entire Spider Rockets band twice before, and so what made this interview a lot different, it was the first time I'd interviewed her by herself. And so with that being said, it allowed me the opportunity to kind of get Helena's personal story out, find out a lot more about her personal history and who she is. And we did just that. Another great interview I recently did with Nick Z. Marino. Nick is another guy I've interviewed about 3 or 4 times already. Now, anybody doesn't know about Nick Z. Marino, he is he's a singer and keyboard player for Yngwie Malmsteen for like the last 20 years. In fact, interestingly enough, Nick Z. Marino has been the one vocalist that has had the longest tenure in the history of Yngwie Malmsteen's band, you know, so quite an accomplishment. I always love talking to Nick. Now, I got to thank my good friend Tom Collier for both the Spider Rockets and the Nick Z. Marino interview. You know, of course, Tom is the president of Fire Rock Music Group, and we also did the This Is Metal show together. And so that's how I know Tom. Tom's just a super great guy, and so he helped me get both interviews. Now again, what was fun with interviewing Nick Z. Marino is because I had interviewed him before, I didn't want to ask the same boring question, or not boring question, but I didn't want it to be a repeat of other interviews and ask him the same questions that he'd already been asked for. So I made a point of asking different questions. And one of the things that I was not aware of until kind of doing a little more research on Nick for this interview was that he does a great cover, his band MZM, Nick Z. Marino Band, of Casey and the Sunshine Band, Get Down Tonight. Now, as you hear me and Nick talk during the JROCK'S Babylon interview that just went up a couple days ago, is talking about his decision to cover Casey and the Sunshine Band classic. And what's interesting enough is anybody who knows that great disco beat from the classic Casey and the Sunshine Band song, the Nick Z. Marino's version of a song, you would not even know it was the same song. He really does a great job of metalizing it up, if you know what I mean. He puts his stamp all over the song, and you never know it was a disco hit back in the day, I tell you. But that's what I loved about it. So, and as far as a solo artist, what I got to say, Nick Z. Marino, although he's been playing with Yngwie Malmsteen, that's been his main gig for the last 20 years. He's also done his solo thing, the NZM band, Nick Z. Marino Band, on the side for several years. And then just a couple of years ago, he signed, I think two years ago, signed with Fire Rock Music Group. And they put out a best of NZM Band, kind of to reintroduce the NZ Band to the world. And they've done a great job of that. People picked up the best of. And now, as you'll see Nick talk about in this new interview with me, is there's actually 2 new NZM albums, you know, on the way. The first will come out before the end of the year, and that's going to be like a best of his ballads, a best of collection of all the great MZM ballads. So we have that to look forward. What a nice little stocking stuffer before the end of the year, right, folks? And then the new MZM studio album coming out early next year in 2026. And there's a new single that he's already released that's going to be on that album, No Way in Hell. We talked all about that track, the fact it's a new single, the fact that he's got a killer new video. Nick Z. Marino is very involved in making the videos and producing everything. He's got his own home studio that he does the interview from, live from his Florida home. So check out my interview with Nick Z. Marino. And then another interview that you guys just really responded to was with this guy, Steve Gordon, MIA. Now, before I even spoke with Steve, I knew very little bit about him. Now, how I found out about Steve and the huge talent that he is was through his publicist, Michael Brandville, another guy who's given me a lot of great interviews over the years. So I did my research on Steve. He's got two great tracks out that we talk about. And then, of course, I had to ask him about the MIA, Steve Gordon MIA, with that missing in action. Comes to find out it has a lot to do with the fact that he's from Miami, Florida. And he said, Jason, if I didn't have something at the end of the name, how many Steve Gordons are on Facebook? And I found that out to be true. So as far as marketing himself, Steve Gordon, me, a very talented guitarist, producer. Steve talks all about who and what he is. And I tell you, he is one of the greatest musicians as far as that I've discovered recently. And I guess you could say he's been kind of hiding himself because he's produced a lot of music for other people, but he's starting to do his own thing. And there's a great instrumental track. You go on YouTube, look up Steve Gordon Mia called Pharaoh's Lives. Very kind of, it's got an Egyptian vibe. He said, I didn't even have a title, Jason, for the song until I heard it myself. It kind of had this Egyptian vibe going. So that's why I called it Pharaohs. I was always into watching these documentaries about King Tut and Egypt. And just because I that's another thing I was into when I was much younger. And I reminded Steve, hey, back in 1985, Iron Maiden released a Power Slave album, and there's a real kind of Egyptian feel to the album cover and that. And so just Steve's a great guy. So check out the interview. A lot of you have already checked it out. So thanks for that. Thanks. And also thanks in regards to the Spider Rockets interview that we posted, because that has already hit over 2K. And the fascinating thing is the interview's been up for about 4 days now. Just in the last 24 hours, it got to this kind of crazy viral number. But thanks for responding, because that shows me that, like I said, the dog being part of the interview, I think that has a huge part of people checking that out. Now, another thing, again, we're just into 1 month of JROCK'S Babylon. Another thing that we launched, we're just into episode 1 of JROCK'S Review Show, okay? This is a show where each time we do an episode's going to be divided up into 4 separate parts. And for example, right now, the first episode, we're talking about the new Alice Cooper album, The Revenge of Alice Cooper. Great album, but I wanted this to be much more than just a 1-part episode where I tell you guys, love a fantastic new Alice Cooper album, go out and get it. I want to get into the nuts, the nitty gritty. I want to not just tell you if I like it, but why I like it. First of all, if I'm reviewing something on the show, you already know I like it. Now, here's where we're a little different with JROCK'S Review Show. Okay, the fact that I'm reviewing it, you already know I like it, but there may be some things about the album maybe that I don't like. I'll give you a great example. Okay, I love physical CDs, physical albums. Maybe that's to do with the fact I'm a guy from the 70s and 80s. That's the time when I grew up, okay? And so physical product was a big part of my life. I remember going, seeing an album cover, in the store or in an ad in Circus Magazine or something, and be like, it tell you the release date, and be like, man, I gotta get that. That looks so cool. And of course, I'm talking about bands like Motley Crue, Kiss, Van Halen, Iron Maiden. I told this story a lot. I remember seeing both like Kiss's Destroyer and Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast back in the day. And being a young lad myself, not really having an idea of what it was. What the hell is this? I remember seeing, Number of the Beast especially. I don't know what the hell that is, but I have to get it. So in one of the episodes, we might, let's say, talk about what I call the whole package. Does it got a great album cover? Is it not so great? Because back in the day, the album cover, the artwork had a big thing to do with me buying it personally. So, if I like something, I'll still buy it. Maybe The album cover sucks, but the music's great. So we get into all that. Now, the fun thing about JROCK'S review show, we've only done the first two parts of episode one, so we got like two more to go. But what you will eventually see as we do more of these episodes, another thing to JROCK'S review show is we are going to also be given, we're going to be ranking whatever we're reviewing. So, for example, in regards, let's say to Alice Cooper's Revenge, the latest album by Alice Cooper, we can rank it anywhere, let's say from 1 to 25. Now, in regards to the whole package, so if I think the album cover is really killer, they get a, the album cover might get a 25. Now, maybe we're talking about an album that's kind of good, but all 10 tracks don't maybe necessarily knock me out. So for like maybe when we're rating the songs, it might get maybe a 15. Maybe I don't like all the songs, but I like some of them or most of them. So we're honest in the ranking there. Now, the other thing I will say finally about the JROCK'S review show is the fun thing about that's going to be that it's going to be a lot more than just reviewing music or CDs. We're going to get into reviewing books and reviewing maybe movies and DVDs. So that'll be a fun aspect of that show. And as I said at the top of this, another thing that I'm really excited about, I'm going to be launching a pop culture show. So I think we're going to do one of these episodes, which I'm kind of calling this thing we're doing today, the state of JROCK'S Babylon. It's kind of going to be an update of things that we've posted and things going on. So I am so excited and want to thank everybody for being part of JROCK'S Babylon. I hope everybody has a happy Labor Day. And another thing with the channel that I'm kind of making a point to do is that I want to update the site, pretty regularly. So you can expect to see at least 2 or 3 new things go up every week. And that's just because I enjoy doing this. And so we want to make some great entertainment for you guys. And again, it's been a ton of fun. So we're just 1 month into this. So thanks again. Everybody have a happy Labor Day. See you again real soon. We have so much going on. I can't wait for y'all to see what we got down the line. Take care. Talk to y'all later. Bye for now.